Recording. Well, it's good to have you here, and it's good to have our audience, committed and loyal and coming back to us. Considering that we always try to bring valuable content, and it's my pleasure to have Andrei here today again, in continuation of the webinar. Not the last one, the one before, back in October, I think it was when Andrei was talking about grid interactive data centers and unlocking flexibility, revenue, and resilience in the renewable era. Today, since it's the first, I think it is first webinar this year for us. So we decided to continue this topic with a powering AI and the race to energy independence. And the reason why we decided to continue with this topic is because AI and data centers, and especially energy infrastructure, is one of our not AI and data centers, but energy infrastructure for AI and data centers is one of our key directions and strategic focus sectors for QPQ this year. So we are actively working on a number of projects across US and Europe, and hopefully here in the Middle East soon as well, where we will be attracting investments into the energy infrastructure for data centers. So we're lucky to have Andrei here again with us to continue this topic. Just a few quick announcements and introduction of QPQ to those who are new to and first time attending our webinars. QPQ is investment advisory, and now with the new model that we're rolling out, we will be also co-developers. So exciting changes coming, happening in the company. We're growing our due diligence team, and we're growing our capabilities in terms of co-development. So we will be helping developers to bridge the bankability and investor readiness gap with our initiatives to bring more DevEx investors into our network and eventually to create a fund. This will be a great opportunity for those developers to fast track and to bring those projects to the market and eventually get them funded. And it's not only for the data centers and powering AI. It's of course, we are active within full spectrum of renewable energy and sustainability space. But mostly we do nowadays hybrid, so it's PV plus BESS, standalone BESS. We do some projects in wind, geothermal, hydropower, quite a bit of waste to energy, and especially in sustainable aviation fuels, end-of-life tire processing, biomass, biofuels, a bit of hydrogen production, and of course, green data centers and data centers in general from the energy infrastructure standpoint. So we have quite a large network of investors, as of now, already close to 900 investors that we work with, mainly funds, family offices, and a lot of IPPs, all the large independent power producers in our network. So as investment advisory, we've always been focusing on helping developers to secure project finance, equity, debt, and helping pure play developers to sell their projects to funds and IPPs who wants to build and operate it. But now, as I said, with the new model that we are rolling out, we will be a bit more hands-on. We will be playing a role of co-developers and using our expertise and connections network to streamline the process and hopefully bring more renewable energy projects into the market and have at least from as much as possible from our standpoint some positive impact on the global economy and global climate change in a positive way. So I will be posting some links in the chat section, some useful links for those who are developers or people who have access to projects. You guys will be able to to reach out to us. We can put a referral agreement in place and help you to share those projects with us. Or of course, if you're a developer, just reach out to us directly. I'll put my email and also link how you can contact us. It will be available in the chat, along with a few other useful links for you to explore. And of course, I will now upload Andrei's presentation along with QPQ presentation. I will be re-uploading it again closer to the end of today's webinar to ensure those who joined late also can see it and have access to it. Very important. If you have a question, and we urge you guys to share your thought, don't be shy. And Andrei loves answering complicated questions. So if you won't be able to post it in chat, You can answer all questions. I love picking your brain. It's always pleasure. So in Q&A section, there is a button in Zoom. You can post your questions, and then we will dedicate the last 10-15 minutes to answer those questions. Um, yeah, and so Andrea, I'll be on the background. I'll switch off my video and I'll be kind of managing questions, and then in the end we can go over it and yeah, and it will be great. So thanks again for dedicating time to talk to our audience today, and thank you for everyone for being here. So Andre, the floor is yours. I haven't done your introduction, but I mean, I prefer you do it yourself.
Okay, I can do it. I can do it. I think I can handle it.
Sure, sure.
Um, Thank you again, Vlad, for inviting me. I'm really excited to be part of the of your community, of this audience, and to be back to Dubai again. So I'll just kick off about quick introduction of myself and build up on my previous presentation, which was done here just a couple of months ago. But first, let me talk a little bit about myself. My name is Andrei Garanin. I've been in the energy sector or in this industry for closer to I think for over 20 years right now. And most of my career I spent in power generation. I would say probably like 90% of this time was in construction of various, I think all power generation technology except nuclear. I've been one way or another, I've been involved with. And this journey took me across different, not just different countries, but different continents. I used to work in Europe, did projects in Central Asia, Middle East, US, a bit of Africa, and I'm really excited to actually to share some of the insights, which I can say from not just from my experience, but what's going on right now. Because over the last, I think, many of you as energy, are the project developers, stakeholders, managers, you know that past probably like 15 or 20 years, we've been living through exciting times. We're going through energy transition, and right now it's really exciting time for energy industry professionals to be in and to take part of it, part in this. So just few words what I've been doing for the last few years. As I mentioned, since I've been busy with power generation, in early 2022, it's been a kind of pivoting period for myself. I saw that I've been quite busy developing solar, wind, um, alternative gas fuel energy projects. And what I saw is that after building several hundred of them, several hundred of megawatts, and I've observed that the space becoming quite crowded. And at the same time, we are not addressing the real challenge, the real bottlenecks, is that yes, power generation become quite I would put it in this word, not so easy to put online, but at least it's really has been developed broad. If you remember the early days when the renewables just came around, it was like the industry has had to have some kind of support from the governments, from the different schemes to be able to launch these projects later on. It became a very competitive space when the capital started competing with each other, and the all the companies which are operating on the power generation side and power consumption, both were competing for grid interconnection. Effectively, connecting to the grid become the single biggest challenge. So I decided to dedicate myself to actually try to address this challenge, and we created a team of specialists who cooperated initially with the management systems for data centers of different types, and decided to operate actually grid solutions based on the large consumer load. So we developed few operations based like for initially started in Europe, in the Nordics, when we used and like a compute data center to balance the grid, and we developed the first project for frequency balancing. This was back in 2023, and since then, the journey took us to across the ocean. We started operating in US market, and that's where I want to focus. So here's my next slide. Hope you can see it. And I think I will spend some time on it, just explaining what it really means for all of us, and what it really means for the energy energy industry, not just in US but globally. So, a few words. First of all, I think most of you, if not all, heard about AI. Right now, any podcast, any webinar is focusing about the emergence of AI technologies and what kind of challenges it brings, both on the technical, ethical, job creation, or job replacement. That's been, I think, a topic for the last couple of years, but especially it's accelerated for the last couple of months. Because you can see if you've been following the latest Davos talks, the energy emergency of AI technologies has been the center point of the CEOs and the executives of the largest companies. So if you can see my chart on the right top corner, you can see the actual global challenge. This has been a forecast, has been done last year by Deloitte, explaining that the consumption will not just double by the data centers, it will rise multiple times, more than 10 times. It will increase in the next 10 years. It's driven not just by the wild guess of saying, okay, this is a boom, and then there are some arguments saying that, okay, this is maybe a temporary bubble. And the argument is all about the whether it will be sustainable or it will burst at some point, and the AI will kind of make a more gradual pace. But having myself been firsthand involved in the development of AI products, working closely with AI, not just on the infrastructure level, but as well on the actual operational level and developing products with the AI, I can see that the forecast, which has been like flying around, is just the beginning. Basically, we are at the beginning of a massive trend where we don't know exactly where it will land, but having the history behind us, maybe some of you old enough just to remember what has been happening like 20 years ago. Um, there was a dot-com bubble. Right now, it's studied in the business schools and most of the economics books in economics. It's just saying, okay, this was the early emergence of the products built on the emergence of internet. This was a breakthrough technology, as has led to massive fundamental changes in how we do things, how we operate, and how we work. It created a lot of jobs. At the same time, it eliminated certain jobs. So it had massive influence on the society and how we do things. Uh, I can definitely say that the same thing awaits us with the AI technology, because when most of us interact with the AI systems, we interact with chats like GPT or Gemini or some other products. The thing is, right now it seems like these are like layer one technology, which will host a lot of other projects which will be built on top of it. So, speaking about that, why I'm making like such a long introduction? It will all make an implication towards the energy consumption and energy systems as we know it right now. So, facing such a massive demand from this sector alone, what effectively it will, how it will actually, imply, and what will happen to the energy industry itself. Because I decided to focus specifically on US for one simple reason, because the United States right now, I think, they are positioned themselves on the edge of this new trend. You can see most of the AI technologies, AI companies are based in the United States. There are a number of factors why it is happening. It's one thing, it's long-term availability of venture capital. The other part is power availability, and another factor, of course, the investment stability and welcoming. I will touch upon about the other regions in the world, which I think will be the next or have potential for growth. But currently, US, it's blueprint how things will unfold in other parts of the world. At the same time, how the grid and the energy sector industry will handle this transition and accommodate this consumption. So from this slide, you can see as well some of the numbers which are currently at the bottom of the page, the current estimation power, demand, and what would be needed to be done in order to come to cover the shortfall, because definitely there is not enough capacity in the US alone to meet the trend. And I'll talk about a little bit about the ability to somehow offset some of the shocks which we will have in the coming years and months. And one of the main thing is that I just want to stress out that demand changes fast. The supply sometimes take years to accommodate that. And what we'll have, all of us, will be left with the either increased costs and the power prices, or in the worst case, we'll have to decide what kind of industry to allow to grow, or something we need to be adjusted in this the actual system, how to bring the capacity online. So several things. It's already been discussion in the top cabinets, execs, and the government officials. What about available power? Probably heard as well that United States is really busy with the reshoring its manufacturing capacity, and there was an estimation that in order to bring back some of the manufacturing, which is the current administration focus, the emergence of AI would each of these trends would require doubling current power generation capacity, not to mention about the grid capacity, which is the current bottleneck. And there is definitely, I don't want to be really, I don't want to stress here geopolitics, but it comes into play when we talk about the trends of ending, gaining capacity of different parts of the world. China, on one hand, is rapidly building and adding new capacity, especially in renewables, because it's easy to build, it's modular, it's already has enough economies of scale, and it's really economical. And US has currently they have this trend. They've been enjoying as well. The trend, the renewable energy capacity has been gathering the momentum, but still obviously the scale is still behind, and they need to really catch up with the other parts of the world in order to be able to be just to meet up the demand. And here I want to mention another element is the well, we call it like flexibility gap. What it really means, the capacity is actually becoming lesser of a concern rather than the actual capacity of the grid to transport. So what is really happening in the grid? The more capacity you add, the more consumption you add, the actual stability in the grid, because the grid has to be equal at the same, like at any given moment, the power produced and power consumed has to be equal. Therefore, the energy operators, the grid operators, they face a challenge how to make it happen, because they cannot really like manually operate like in every like every second. They have to set up a certain mechanism how to make sure that the grid stays stable. And in the face of one extremely for them concerning trends, first of all, new generation capacity being added are renewables, which have where I say one small disadvantage. They're intermittent. Both wind and solar need to be balanced, meaning that you need to have a certain rapidly available by the capacity, spinning reserve, or a battery, which is ready to kick in if there is a shortfall in power generation. At the same time, if there is an immediate hike in the power consumption, it has to be compensated. So the grid operators, they go along. I deleted the slide which I had in my previous presentation, where I was explaining a little bit how the grid operate, what kind of the safety nets are embedded or built into the system. So I decided to focus here more like on the global trends, and then I'm happy to answer any more detailed questions about actually how it operates and how things are being mitigated. But the main message here is that having the challenge of interruptible power supply, when we have emerging trend of the AI data centers, we have as well intermittency on the consumption end. Just one word, very short about the AI data center nature, how they operate. Effectively, one GPU is it's a computer. And the interesting part of it, feature, is that it can operate as well, it can jump in consumption rapidly and the drop consumption rapidly as well, because it takes a task and it doesn't have it doesn't require a lot of momentum. It just starts consuming. And if you scale it, when you talk about like megawatts or gigawatts of data center load, then you're talking about like rapid changes. Of course, on the larger scale, hyperscalers, they offset some of these fluctuations. Nevertheless, we will have some intermittency coming into the system, which will add to the intermittency which we have on the generation side. And that will create quite a challenge for grids to handle. That definitely the solution to this challenge will increase the capacity, will increase the ability for the grid to transport more amount of energy, and it will help them to manage the new loads better. And especially, they will be able to support the speed of deployment. Um, just interesting element as well, what has been happening with the AI data centers. We see as well a rapid increase in deployed batteries. I mentioned specifically here for a reason, because the trend really coincides with the development of data centers. BESS have become a really popular tool. First of all, I would say not the least due to the deregulation of the markets, which allowed private investors to deploy their assets, as well apply for the interconnection permits and deploy standalone batteries, all co-located with some of the power loads, to be able to sell the ancillary services, which is like balancing services to the grid. And for certain parts of the world, it became really, really a profitable activity. If you look at let's say there is a chart by one consultant. I'm happy to answer it later on. They made like a color chart. What is the profitability of certain assets or projects deployed, I can say in Europe as an example. And I would say well over 60% or 70% were in profits. And we see that it's a clear trend. And well, my personal belief, battery is amazing technology, but not just to be used standalone, but to be used in conjunction with the with another technology, which is data center management. And this is a trend which can be captured, and it's a huge market for all of us to venture into. And here I'm coming to the part of the let's say of discussion of this webinar, the purpose of this webinar. I would say traditionally data centers have been around for about, I don't know, for decades already, and traditionally they've been static consumers, power consumers. They declare that how much they need, 100 megawatt, 50 megawatt, and usually they consume somewhere close to that, obviously for the exception for maintenance. At the same time, we'll see that the rapid growth would require more interconnection requests and application for connection to the grid. And it creates another opportunity and another model for operating with them, is that the data centers, for some reason, they were not capturing the value of energy grids, meaning that they've been consuming stable power with the base load curve. At the same time, they had the capacity, they had UPSs, they had batteries actually from the start, because most of the data centers, they need backup power. They need either battery or they need a genset. So they need both of them just to keep them stable. And there have been some experiments by some of the players in the market saying, okay, we'll try to deploy some of these assets which are power equipment, which is being idle effectively. Backup is a backup. It's just sitting there waiting for for an event of power loss to kick in. Um, and they never ventured, at least as of late of last year, more than experiment and some of the just test pilot projects. They've been doing it in Ireland, I think US, part of Europe. At the same time, it's not been main trend. The thing is that there is a reason to it, and I will come to a bit close to it deeper. The reason is that most of the data center deployment as we know it are being developed by so-called hyperscalers. We all hear about OpenAI, we hear about the data centers from by Google and all the other big players. At the same time, these are huge corporations. Somebody has to make a decision. If you want to make a bold move and say, okay, I want to change my data center into the grid interactive unit or asset, that's somebody has to make a decision, taking all the risks, and down the line, it's quite often a risky decision, basically, to make such a move that something can go wrong, and you're really fiddling with the power supply of your multi-billion investment. And imagine if something goes wrong, then well, it will be some heads will basically roll in the corporate world. Uh, Hence, it's not being widely adopted. At the same time, smaller players who have much more, let's say, kind of, much more, do we have to be cautious about the costs, and they're looking for opportunities. They have been leading this new trend by connecting the grid, sorry, data centers, their assets to the grid programs. Especially, it's been clear in the United States, especially in deregulated markets like Texas or PJM. We know we have a lot of clients who operate there, who operate assets like around up to 50 megawatt. And these players are much more agile, much more flexible, and we see that they can be a backbone or at least a test model for big players to follow on. But they are developing products, they're developing solutions, how to be not just a consumer, but be proactive, be a consumer who can balance the grid, who can effectively sell the capacity back to the grid, and help definitely during the difficult times like we have right now. We have the cold wave across Europe and US to offload some of the loads basically, and to help to supply power where it's needed the most right now. And speaking about that, what is the grid interactive data center? First of all, it's not just a data center which can reduce the load. It doesn't have to be disconnecting or reducing consumption to zero. The only thing has to be controllable. This term came about in, I think, in ERCOT in Texas a couple of years ago, when the panel determined that controllable load has a priority in interconnection. And they started actually welcoming such consumers who can prove that they can be flexible and can respond rapidly to changes and are ready to reduce your consumption. What you can do is, it depends, of course, on the market. But speaking about states, as I would say, like they are up at the front of all these changes and adoption of the new technologies. Currently, they show that if the consumer can demonstrate that they can adjust the load in a rapid time, first of all, they can get a preference in interconnection time, so they can skip some of the queues. If you look at the different regions, but some utilities currently in US have the queues for interconnection, both for loads and for the power generation, for about like 10 years plus, and it's becoming increasing like a reality. I've been recently having a meeting with the energy advisor in UK. It's the same issue. There is a queue of projects which is ready to be deployed, but they're all waiting for approval from the utility and from the grid operator, because they're large enough, so they have to be approved. And right now they're as well passing through changes, adjusting the regulation to allow the assets which are more suitable for the future of the grid to be allowed in first, rather than to be, like there was a kind of a mix. So currently, it's being realized by the operators both, and by the developers that you need to come up with the flexible solution and creative to be operational. And when we talk about the grid data center developers, we'll see that they require currently, already as a standard, if you're, say, if you're not big enough to wrestle your way through, but you need to deploy yourself within like a reasonable time, year or 2 years. Then you need to come up with the ability to respond to the dispatch from the grid. And at the same time, many started deploying batteries. My team is busy actually in collocating battery and storage systems along with the data centers, the ones which have extra capacity or pivoting towards the AI load, like tier 3 or tier 4 type data centers. They need batteries for not just for the providing services to the grid, but as well for providing backup. And current system can operate both ways. It's not usually in the markets. It's not restricted to have like a backup power in case you have a major power loss from the main line, which is feeding your asset. You can um, uh, connect on the to the battery and switch on if the power is lost. So this way you're not violating any rules. But at the same time, what you can do, you can make your battery asset operate as an active unit, which can generate revenue, which would enough to recoup itself within a few years. It's a really lucrative investments. It depends on the location. It's always about location, as any interconnection. It's all about the where you deploy it. But currently, we'll see that the more intermittency will be in the grid, the more demand for stability and for flexibility services will be there. So until the markets are growing, Europe is on the way to integrate them. There's a Picasso program to integrate balancing markets to create a large enough pool for these services in European grid, and US are evolving themselves as well. We see the PGM, especially ancillary services, increased like I think for the last 1.5 years, for the past 18 months, roughly about 10 times. The capacity market has increased, and the prices are really lucrative, especially for those who own and develop the battery projects. Uh, I briefly explained what is dual battery for data centers, but just to reiterate, it's all about being able to operate directly with the grid, interact with the grid, and at the same time serve as a backup to a data center. Especially, it's really important for emerging markets and newcomers to the data center industry. There's a tremendous interest in in the community, especially investors, how to enter AI race and whether there is enough value to be created and enough returns to be made. And just here, I just want to mention or stop a little bit about the BlackRock CEO, his speech on the Davos conference just a few weeks back. He mentioned interesting thing that so far it's still a model to be explored. How how much money would be made on the what would be revenues from the AI data centers? There is a reason to that. It's just right now we know all about the interesting things about how the AI is going and the trends, but the most important part is that we still need to learn about the lifetime of the actual hardware, so that we need to understand whether the investments into the um, into crypto, oh sorry, apologies, AI hardware, GPUs, would this hardware operate for another 5 years, or it can be replaced in just in 1 year. There will be a new model developed by NVIDIA, and then we'll have to invest again. And currently the operations are rapidly, or the returns are like jumping because it all depends on technology. So we'll see a lot of interesting things happening, but at the same time, there is enough capital to venture into to develop the pilot projects, and especially in dual use batteries. I will see an opening that it creates for the operators to deploy both, to de-risk at least some of the projects by deploying battery services with the battery assets with other partners who would invest, who would operate them, and cover, but at least take some of the risk away from the data center operators or investors. The speed of deployment will matter a lot in the next or the coming time, and I think it will only accelerate. The Why I mentioned here is that the more asset, the new asset will be useful towards the grid, and more it will help to absorb more loads and absorb more interconnections for the power generation, the more it will have the paveway for the interconnection. As well, I want to mention here the recent publication that was already done this year by PGM. They green lighted and they adopted new regulation. I think it kicked in on 16th of January, saying it's okay, bring your own generation, meaning that if you want to deploy something, like deploy a consumer large load, you will have a preference if you bring your own generation. It can be battery, because battery it's both, it operates both ways. It's a power generation in the way, and of course, if you can deploy a power generation unit asset, then as well you will have a green light much faster than any other asset deployed there. Grids, they need flexibility, they need power generation, and it will only accelerate. So the more you come prepared, the more you will have the ability to deploy faster. Already covered this part in my previous discussion, and saying that PGM ERCOT probably the other two markets which are currently going through major transition and growth. They're testing all the adoption of new regulation technologies, and how to integrate and operate with the industry players. And but I want to mention here as well the other parts of the world where I believe will be happening next great thing. Definitely on the list there is Middle East. It's basically areas where you have abundance of power, or you have at least access to like sources of solar. You have sources of power generation of nuclear, or the most important thing still, which will not get away, is that where you can rapidly deploy power generation, of course, is gas. Uh, the access to gas will matter a lot, because it will define who will take the lead in that, because that's where you can deploy the units faster. A lot of gas generation units are modular, so you can move them around if you see if there will be enough capacity developed by from other sources. But it's definitely will be one of the core technologies, even that it's not green, obviously in a total sense. But not, I need to mention that methane is probably the single most polluting gas on the planet. So the more we utilize it, the more it will be, let's say, net effect, rather than just vented or flared on the from the gas field. And since we don't have that many technologies to store it, because it's costly, it requires lots of development, gas will be probably one of the fuels which will be, unfortunately, it's still considered fossil, but it could be one of the players in the one of the factors who would be to take into consideration where the next growth will be. I need to mention as well Australia. They have as well access to the probably the potential for the renewables. It's massive, and the other parts we need remains to see. We'll see how it will develop in Europe. Europe has a lot of potential, but they are still struggling through the energy crisis and the quite elevated energy prices, which need to be tackled first before they kind of become competitive. But that remains to see. I think they are working as well quite hard on the overcoming this challenge. And we'll see you in the next months and years. And yeah, just a few things that the more flexible you'll be on the grid, the more advantages you will have, like in financing, regulatory, and the more green lights you will have in the dealing with the grid. Uh, Another thing to mention, last but not least, is the technology. I believe that technology is there. We already developed smart systems, smart enough to operate in the complex environments where this is from the screenshot from the live system, where it's a complex microgrid where you have power generation, power consumption, you have grid coming in, and that has to be managed real life or also real time. And at the same time, the whole microgrid has to provide services to the grid and be part of the larger network and be useful and be so-called develop like a smart grid. Uh, in the wider sense. This microgrid, which you see here on the like a screenshot, is being managed by an AI agent, which in real time checks the energy prices, checks the power consumption, the forecast, the weather, all other flexible or variable factors which take into account when you operate a complex system. And this is just one of the, let's say, call it layer two applications of AI, and it will come more and more. And we believe it will be definitely interesting part of interesting times to live through. So let's kind of wrap it up. What is the impact of having a flexible and a controllable load? One is that you need to remember that, or just to take into consideration, any grid operator considers reliability as a main priority. It's number one. If you have a blackout, if you have rolling blackout, it's already a disaster in itself. You know, it's cost of billions of dollars, not to mention it can cost human lives. It's huge impact on the community, and they go a long way actually to stabilize the grid, and that's quite often that's why many developers are in the queue just waiting for the next available slot to deploy the assets because the grid operators have to check, recheck. They need to design and verify all the protection layers and make sure that the new load or the new production or new generation will not disrupt the stability of the grid. So having that promoting the flexibility and controllable software and the the actual system which can be managed and managed proactively, we're definitely moving towards the brighter future. We are moving towards the more capacity and the technologies which are already available, like batteries, the AI agents which manage the grid, and the interconnection. That's definitely it's way forward. So speed will matter. The speed of deployment, and greater reliability will be achieved through the flexibility, and it has to be a quite close cooperation with the local utilities, local authorities, in order to make sure that the deployment of the assets will be like in time and in budget, and it will contribute toward the greater good of grid integration and development. Think here I can wrap it up because part of this presentation I covered in my last session, so you can always look it up in the system, sorry, on the website. But we are promoting that pairing different assets like batteries, power generation with the active and controllable loads is so definitely the way forward. And we're looking forward to chat about that. Yeah, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Andre. Great presentation, great delivery. I love your style. Very, very easy to understand and digest because sometimes you go into those AI and data centers and all those things. The complicated presentations, people can get easily lost. So I really appreciate you sharing your wisdom and experience with us today. We still have some bit of time to go over a few questions. Just first question will come from me, a bit of a provocative kind of discussion.
Yeah.
In general, do you think, well, there is some, talks or gossip or whatever you can call it, do you think, that AI is a bubble? Do you think it's
Mhm.
possible? What do you think of this?
I think I mentioned briefly that let's talk about bubble a little bit. Thing is, we always kind of take reference from the history. The last bubble we had, like in the kind of this space, was dot-com bubble. If you're old enough, you just remember like end of 90s, early 2000s. The Obviously the investment community overestimated at that time the speed of deployment, how the internet will change things, how we will buy things from the internet, that the shops will become obsolete and everything will be done online. The thing is, uh, that bubble burst briefly, but if you look at the over the period of time from then till now, the how the world has changed, it will be tremendous. I mean, the industry has grown, not just, I don't know, tenfold, I don't know, probably hundredfold. And from there, we have some of the companies went bust. I still remember the time. I'm old enough to remember. I was a student at that time in London. I remember all these like interesting startups appearing, like websites. It's without anything. It's just a website, and there was like immediately was like flooded with money
Mhm.
for the just for the name or just kind of concept. And but from there, from that time, just think about it. We have trillion companies like Google. We have Amazon, a number of others which appear from that era,
Mhm.
which all have become like a product of that era. And yes, indeed, some of the companies, companies and the startups went bust. But overall trend, it did not change the overall trend. Probably like you would not recognize if you look from the really early 10s, like 2011 13, looking back and during dot-com bubble, you will see that already the world has changed. You know, we all had like Facebooks, we have the online shopping, social media, all the kind of thing which we didn't have at that time. And overall, the value which has been unlocked by that technology is so tremendous. So I would say, like on the long term, probably we just underestimate what kind of value will be unlocked by this new technology. And
Mhm.
I'm not just overexcited about it. It's about the things. If you look at about automation, or if you go dive into the actual technology, how it actually operates and what it can do, you see that we are in early stages. Like it's still right now. It's a kind of a jungle warfare. We need to understand what kind of way evolution will take us, and then we'll see. So, because
Agree.
even if it will be a brief kind of deflation of the trend, I think in the next, like in the long term, it will be definitely a massive boost, and it will be a different world.
I think it's a perfect explanation. Phew, so it's okay. It's gonna be okay then.
No,
So
you
I
need
mean,
to still try to look
yeah.
long term,
Yes,
like
exactly.
not
I think
maybe.
you hit it right on the head. It was speed of deployment. I mean the I mean whoever is kind of driving this and making forecasts, I think they overestimate, like they probably overestimated with internet and .com. They overestimate the speed of deployment. So I think most of people nowadays hardly imagine going back to writing the content and doing things without AI. It's just put those are the simple things, but that does so much more. I mean, we're embedding AI now into our processes as well. So I think it's here to stay, which is a good thing for everyone, I think. And it's just speed of deployment, and it explains actually the problems that Oracle is going through now. You heard that they're on the verge of bankruptcy because I think they agreed to with OpenAI to build $300 billion worth of data centers, and OpenAI is not able to meet this, and I think that's why they're kind of going almost under. That's what I read yesterday.
Okay, few words about this. First of all, again, look at long term, because there will be, let's say, like tactical mistakes or missteps or some kind of events, fortunate or unfortunate by some of the players. And indeed, there was like, yeah, it was some, you see, kind of the Wall Street, the obviously the investors, they run on the like really flashy headlights when you say, okay, we want to deploy like so much like gigawatts of capacity by, I don't know, by that time. And then you find out, okay, to build it, you need to do so much things. You need to start developing, I think, yesterday, to deliver when you want to, when you promise to do it. But in general, what we're talking about the hyperscalers. And to be honest, I do not believe there will be, definitely will be the major, I would say, like kind of like icebreakers who will be carrying forward the industry. But the real value will be unlocked when they will be more like widespread trends. Because I take another analogy. Going back again, like to a couple of decades or even decade ago, who were main drivers of the renewable energies? It's more like all the well established companies which are like Chevrons and Shells and Total, like all this world. And you look at the world right now, how many other developers you see? There are other companies who emerged completely on the big guys are still there,
Mhm.
definitely, but there are other players who have appeared over the last decade, and they are so why I'm mentioning is that there will be definitely other players coming in, and I believe that there will be I would say, a smaller players who will deploy, let's say, a certain assets, which will be in the size of, I don't know, like 5, 10, 20, 50 megawatt. It's talking about power, not number of GPUs. But they will respond to, there is a massive demand which still not been touched, is that when a company like yours or ours utilizing AI, uh, right now we're using the like generic models from the big guys, from big tech. The thing is, if you want to develop some sensitive product, would you like to share it like in the open? Probably not.
Mhm.
So there is a trend already we see from some of our clients who deploy their own LLMs, either for the actual training or for interference only, it's just for support, basically for the support operations. So there definitely will be a kind of new wave of smaller players who already right now sensing the orders. It's just, it's not really become mainstream because not many companies can or radio investors are ready to take the risk of I just mentioned about the life cycle of the hardware. You never know what's exactly if you invest right now, will it be good enough in 1 year or it will become obsolete? So we just need
Mhm.
to have a bit of more time and then we'll see how the things will reshape.
Makes sense. Perfect. Thank you for the explanation. We have some more questions, so let's just quickly try to go over it in the next 5, 10 minutes. So the best options for off-grid independent power supply alternatives with the restrictions of the grid for AI for data centers. Do you think that's the right kind of statement?
Sorry,
So basically, so
sorry,
are the
say
best options for off-grid and independent power supply alternatives with the restrictions of the grid, basically keeping data centers off-grid. Not because there is another question that, what would be the public acceptance role when AI data centers start competing with cities for energy and water. So basically, I just combining those two questions together.
yeah,
Keeping data centers off grid, and not kind of tapping into the
yeah.
taking electricity and water away from, from cities. Do you think that would be a good solution? I don't think there is a
It-
competition, but I mean, there is definitely, and US, I'm aware that some states are not allowing building data centers because there is simply no
yeah.
capacity in the grid for
Yeah,
electricity.
yeah, same thing you will see in Europe. Definitely, it's a challenge. Of course, you will have a much more advantages if you can develop a data center and deploy it without need for the grid. If you can bring your own generation, be it gas, solar, wind, whatever. Currently, you see some of the data centers in the Northern Europe are deploying offshore wind farms, which supplying them directly, and then they using just a fraction of the grid needs just to give them consistency. But I would say somewhere it's possible, but at the same time, grid is uneven. I mean, terms of like and capacity is unevenly distributed. It's just things. See, how things came to be. You see, some places you have excess capacity which is sitting there, which cannot be like there is no off taker for some reasons, for various reasons. I can give you some examples, but it will be too long going through them. But again, what's I think was good about data center deployment, the data center industry, is quite flexible. It can deploy, I wouldn't say anywhere, but it can be flexible in terms of deployment. So then you can actually deploy the unit. You're more safe if you look at it's the energy proficient area, and then you deploy your consumption over there. But probably would not be smart if you start to deploy a data center somewhere like in New York, next to New York City, which is like which would be too like too
Okay.
stressful. But at the same time, you need to be smart when you develop, and depends on the size. Because again, when I was mentioning about the smaller unit, the smaller you are, obviously, the more modular you are, and the more flexible you are in terms of your approach and development, the more success you will have. Because probably you will need to spend years developing like a gigawatt connection, and
Mhm.
then you can jump in if you're modular and you see like a 20 megawatt capacity, which has been just without utilization.
Perfect. Thank you. Question from Fadi. Andrei, thank you for this great presentation. Can you give us some perspective on battery technology obsolescence and what is the recommended investment horizon for current BESS?
I would say like lifetime of current BESS is about the 15 years with the current degradation level of about 2 3% per year. You will have the right now it's still backbone of the technology is still lithium. And LFP batteries currently they are driving the trend because they reach the economies of scale currently when you can deploy them at the reasonable price, which keep your like returns of investment within 5 years. Depends on the market. Sometimes you can reach it much faster. Sometimes you have like closer to 5 years, but the general trend you'll see that you can recoup your batteries like five like around in that time. Depends, of course, on the deployment location. Location really matters because that really will determine your returns of investment and the cost, of course, cost of the interconnection. So that's another trend. But lifetime currently 15 years. We'll see whether the new technology will emerge. But I will say like my bet for the next at least 10 years will be lithium, and we'll see if any other technology will come about. I'm not talking about kinetic, obviously, but the chemical is this one.
Yeah, okay, very good. Question from Ludo, bit of a technical question, and also I think it would be a bit of an estimation because it will really depend on the geographies. But how much energy does data center cooling consume, and what share is this of the total data center consumption?
Uh, the batteries, or sorry, I missed
No,
the initial part.
the actual data center, not the batteries. Well, it's but main consumption is cooling, right? And you know,
Oh, cool.
it's
Yeah,
probably 80%. I heard that somewhere it's about 80%, if I'm not mistaken. But
depends on the. It can be cooling a bit. It's a large depends on what you if you have a, like say um like
also, if you're
a
in
chill.
Dubai or you're in Norway, that will also
Yeah,
depend on.
exactly. It's one thing. It's a requirement. It's number one. Number two, currently the large AI data centers are being deployed next to water. So like rivers or massive lakes or something which you can utilize to dump the heat. There are limitations, of course, environmental consideration to take into account, but there are technologies which are right now being more and more efficient, like immersion technology when you put the servers into the electric, and it's been quite efficient. You don't need that active chiller. You enough get away with the dispersing heat through the dry coolers, and it depends on the climate. It depends on the technology which we deploy. But if you're deploying the latest advances in say immersion or hydro cooling, then you will be you can significantly reduce your to I wouldn't say single digits compared to the percentage of your total consumption, but closer to that. so closer to like say
Good. Let's
10%.
let's
So
cover one more question quickly before we let everyone go. So, everyone is aware that the grid is the main problem in a lot of countries, and it's globally the key issue, with especially now when it comes to developing data centers. So, what do you recommend to overcome this roadblock? What power source? How to maximize renewables at the same time?
I would say that like this. First of all, bring the value to the grid. That's I think that's has been my main message. I try to be like through all of the explanation and perplexity of the current status of things. I think the if you bring value through flexibility by deploying generation, by deploying batteries, then you will have much, first of all, not just a chance of succeeding the project, because project will be success if you bring all of the mentioned stuff. But you'll help building the backbone of the future grid, because the future grid will rely more and more on the rapid controls, on the speed of reaction, and we'll move away from the like old system, because I can talk another hour about the current state of things on different parts of the world, and I've been privileged enough to visit live projects and work on live projects, especially in data center consumption, and we'll see how the things are operating different utilities. You can see tremendous technology gap. But the main thing is the more you're developing like future-proof technologies, utilizing AI, smart agents, hardware, which can take and operate with the integrate with the grid and utilities. You need to bring them on board. That's another challenge, how to bring them on board. But
Mhm.
at least being future-proof, that's way forward.
Yeah, very good. Well, there are a couple of questions that remain unanswered, and apologies to those that we didn't cover. But I think you will find most of the answers in Andrei's presentation from this time and from back in October as well. So I really appreciate your time, Andrei. Thanks again for sharing
Thank
your experience, your wisdom. It's always great to have you with us, and thank you everyone for
you.
attending
Pleasure.
today's webinar. I have posted Andrei's presentation and few useful links in the chat section. So while we wrapping up, you can quickly go and download it. Once again, reminding those who joined late, we will be sending the recording, and we're looking forward to working with you and helping you to fund your projects if you have, not only within data centers but within the renewable energy space. If you're not a developer but you have access to projects, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. My email is in the chat as well, along with the link where you can reach out to us anytime. We'll be happy to review your project and give you some feedback, guidance, and hopefully help you to secure funding for your projects. Thank you very much once again. Good to see you all, Andrei. Looking forward to catching up with you soon again. And yes, have a great rest of the day.
You too. Thanks a lot.
Cheers.
Bye
Bye.
bye.